the one, the only, Bencio.
Good afternoon and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, Iyun to Lean On. Today we're doing Orach Chaim Siman Reish Peitet 289. Talk about the meal on Shabbos day, specifically about Kiddush also, the meal on Shabbos day. Shulchan Aruch in Siman Aleph and Sif Aleph talks about some halachas, which he says just like they apply by Friday night Kiddush. The Gemara talks about Friday night Kiddush, Kiddush Makom Suda, right? We learned all about that. We also learned that another halacha, you're not supposed to eat or drink before you make Kiddush once Shabbos starts. Also, Shabbos morning, you're not allowed to eat or drink once you daven Tefillah Shachris. Not allowed to eat or drink. Now, we learned before, when we learned about Hilchas Musaf, that technically after you daven Shachris, you're allowed, even before Musaf, you're allowed to have a snack. You're allowed to have, not have a meal, but you're allowed to have a snack. It didn't mention about having Kiddush. So, the halacha that you have to make Kiddush first comes from this halacha. It's interesting that it didn't say it over there. Maybe he meant to rely on this halacha over here. However, I wouldn't jump to conclusions so fast to say whatever applies by Kiddush on Friday night applies by Kiddush on Shabbos morning for two reasons. First of all, it's very well known that Kiddush on Friday night is D'oraisa. Kiddush on Shabbos day is definitely not D'oraisa, it's D'Rabbanan. The meal might be even more important because Oneg Shabbos, I explained in the regular shir, is more important to have nicer foods and better foods during the day because people eat more during the day than they eat at night. The meal should be fancier, but the Kiddush, the Chiyuv of Kiddush is only D'Rabbanan. It's not a Chiyuv of Kiddush D'oraisa. So, if the Gemara was talking about halachas of Kiddush Makom Suda by Kiddush D'oraisa, who's to say that it applies by Kiddush D'Rabbanan, right? So Machlokas in the Rishonim and what the source of Kiddush Makom Suda is. Some say it's D'oraisa, some say it's D'Rabbanan. Either way, right? The Kiddush during the day is definitely not D'oraisa. It's only D'Rabbanan. If it's only D'Rabbanan, so it's less chomer. So who says if Kiddush Makom Suda is in the more severe case? Who says in the lighter case it applies also? And second of all, it's halacha. Again, the halacha that you're not allowed to eat anything or drink anything before you make Kiddush. That's again said in the Gemara Pesachim by Kiddush at night. Who says that applies during the day? Why should we assume? We don't. The Gemara says many times, just because things are similar, when Madam and Milsa, you compare one thing to another thing. Unfortunately, you often hear you go ask a shaila or something like that, and people will, Rabbanim will use this phrase. Don't compare one thing to another thing. For kulas, right? Oh, this is mutter, so something else should be mutter also. But unfortunately, over here we see sometimes it's the opposite. With the rabbis, they do the opposite. They say, "Oh, if we're machmer in this case, you're machmer in this case also." Not so fast. If you're not going to let me make from one, bring a proof from one situation to another situation, say they're similar, so let's be makel in the second situation also. So, what gives you the right to say something which is less severe is only the Rabbanan? The same halachas apply also. Why did the Gemara say that? Why did the Gemara say Kiddush Makom Suda by the day meal? Why didn't it talk about eating and drinking before Kiddush by the day meal? And Kol Sheken we should know about the night meal. The answer is that obviously if it is really said by one halacha, we leave it over there. We don't draw conclusions. I agree. We don't have a down middle. Every different halacha you have to look under it from its own perspective. You don't just randomly throw in facts unless you have a compelling reason to do so. So don't just compare just because they're both called Kiddush. One's D'oraisa, one's Rabbanan. It's a very big difference. Very big difference. One, HaKadosh Baruch Hu orchestrated Misinai that he wants to be D'oraisa. The other one's a later Takana, the Rabbanan to make Kiddush. Don't compare the two things together. And therefore I would say, if it's a D'Rabbanan, it's a Kiddush D'Rabbanan. Something D'Rabbanan on the Kula on both of these cases. You don't have to, day meal does not Kiddush Makom Suda, is not necessary. You see this a lot, people have Kiddushim. After a shul, a lot of times people have problems with Kiddush Makom Suda. The rabbi's making Kiddush in one room, then you go to a totally different room or a totally different, building, and you have your meal over there. People are like, Kiddush Makom Suda, Kiddush Makom Suda. No. It's okay. It's just the comparison the Rambam makes. Who says it applies by Kiddush Makom Suda applies during the day? And similarly, who says there's a necessary to eat or drink before Kiddush? I told you that I make Kiddush on coffee. But even if coffee for some reason was not good enough to be called grape juice, which it is, I'm allowed to eat and drink before Kiddush during the day. That's what I believe. Hope you enjoyed today's share. See you in the next one.